All right, let's dive right into a topic that, let's be real, probably hits close to home for all of us. We're talking about procrastination. But forget everything you think you know, because we're about to unpack the surprising and honestly fascinating science behind why we all put things off. I mean, seriously, who hasn't been there? You've got a huge deadline breathing down your neck, and suddenly organizing your sock drawer seems like the most important task in the world. It's that universal, kind of frustrating feeling, right? That massive gap between what you know you should do and what you actually end up doing. For, well, forever, that's been the story we tell ourselves, isn't it? We think procrastination is some deep character flaw, a sign that we're lazy or just don't have enough discipline. So we beat ourselves up thinking, if I just had more willpower, I could fix this. But what if that whole story is just wrong? What if I told you that science, from neuroscience all the way to genetics, is completely flipping the script on procrastination? Turns out it's way, way deeper and a whole lot more complex than just being lazy. Okay, so first up, let's get into the biology, because the real roots of your procrastination aren't sitting in your daily planner. They're wired deep inside your nervous system. This is less about managing your time and a whole lot more about managing what your brain sees as a threat. That's right. When you're avoiding that big project, your brain might literally be perceiving it as a danger. Maybe it's the stress, the fear of failing, or just feeling totally overwhelmed. Whatever it is, it triggers your ancient fight, flight, or freeze response. And here's the key. This isn't a conscious choice. It's a physiological reflex, an instinct. And not reflex, it usually shows up in one of two ways. Think of it like this. Sometimes your gas pedal gets slammed down. That's your sympathetic nervous system. You get that buzzy, anxious energy, right? You're busy, you're doing a million little things, just not the thing. Other times, your brake pedal takes over. That's your parasympathetic system. And suddenly, you're just stuck. Glued to the couch, no energy, total inertia. Sound familiar? So, knowing this, how do you deal with it? Well, fighting your own body with shame just makes things worse. It adds more stress. Science points to a much kinder strategy. First, just acknowledge what's happening without any blame. Just say, okay, my nervous system is trying to keep me safe right now. Second, list 3 super small, totally doable choices. And third, pick the absolute easiest one. I mean, the ridiculously easy one, and just do it. See, this isn't about finding motivation. It's about regulating your nervous system. Okay, but the story gets even wilder. It's not just our nervous system's response in the moment. Our tendency to procrastinate might actually be written into our very DNA. So, there was this huge study published in Psychological Science that looked at identical and fraternal twins, to figure out that whole nature versus nurture thing. And what they found was an absolute game changer for how we understand procrastination. Get this. They discovered that almost half, 46% of our tendency to procrastinate comes directly from our genes. That's a massive genetic link. It suggests that for a lot of us, this isn't a bad habit we picked up. It's a trait we were literally born with. And here's where it gets really interesting. The study found a perfect genetic correlation, a 1.0, between procrastination and impulsivity. In science, a perfect correlation is like finding a unicorn. It means that on a genetic level, the genes that make you put things off are the very same genes that make you act on impulse. They're two sides of the same coin. So why on earth would that be? Well, the leading theory is something called an evolutionary mismatch. For our ancient ancestors, being impulsive was a survival skill. You see a ripe berry, you eat it now. You see a predator, you run now. There was no advantage to long-term planning. But our modern world is all about saving for retirement and hitting quarterly goals. So our ancient impulsive brain wiring is in a constant battle with the demands of modern life. It's the perfect recipe for procrastination. So we've got our biology and our genes pushing us toward what feels good right now. But how does our mind actually convince us it's okay to put things off? Well, it does it by treating the future you like a complete stranger. This quote from neuroscientist Hal Hershfield is just mind-blowing. When they put people in brain scanners, they found that thinking about yourself in 10 years lights up the same parts of your brain as thinking about, say, a celebrity you've never met. Your brain literally sees your future self as somebody else. This psychological gap has a name, temporal disconnection, and it explains so much. It's why we can know logically that eating that extra slice of cake is a problem for future me, but we do it anyway. Because in the moment, it doesn't feel like our problem. We're essentially dumping the hard work and the consequences onto some other person who just happens to have our name. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. We've got a nervous system that sees a threat, genes that are wired for impulsivity, and a brain that thinks our future self is a stranger. When you stack it all up like that, you start to realize why the advice to just do it almost never works. How can it? You're fighting your body, your DNO, and your brain's basic perception of time. It's time for a completely different approach. This right here is the whole point. Trying to conquer procrastination with brute force is like trying to yell at your DNA to change. It's a battle you're destined to lose, and it just creates more stress and shame, which, ironically, just triggers that threat response all over again, making you want to procrastinate even more. The answer isn't to fight it, it's to understand it. So what if, instead of that guilty, mindless procrastination, we tried something called mindful delay? This is about intentionally using that pause as a strategic tool. When you step away from a tough problem without beating yourself up, you give your brain's background processes a chance to work on it. Psychologists call it the incubation effect, and you often come back with more creative solutions. It also massively reduces stress because you're taking guilt out of the picture. And honestly, giving yourself that space often means you come back with a clearer head, ready to make a much better decision. So here's a super practical way to think about it. Look at the don'ts column. We tell ourselves things like, this is just how I am, or we blame ourselves for being lazy. That's a dead end. Now look at the do's column. Instead, you practice self-compassion. You remind yourself that your brain is wired this way, but you can find a workaround. Instead of getting stuck blaming your biology, you use it as an explanation to find a new path forward, like that 3-step exercise we talked about. The whole game is shifting from self-blame to self-awareness, and from feeling stuck to taking the smallest possible step forward. And all of this leads to one final, really powerful question. We've spent our entire lives treating procrastination like it's this enemy we have to destroy. But after everything we've just learned about our brains, our bodies, our evolution, what if that's the wrong fight altogether? What if procrastination isn't a flaw at all? What if it's just a signal? A message from deep inside you that something's off, that you're feeling overwhelmed or afraid, or maybe just disconnected from the person you want to become? And what if learning to listen to that signal, not with anger, but with curiosity, is the real secret to finally moving forward?